Hi, welcome to our daily encounter. Today in chapter 23, we have the Lord talking about and giving instructions concerning the feast that the Israelites were supposed to observe. 3 times a year they were supposed to appear before the Lord. And in those 3 appearings, they would celebrate 7 feasts to the Lord. And one of the ones that is my favorite feast of them all is the Feast of Tabernacles. This one's found at the end of chapter 23. It's the last one mentioned, and I just love the application that comes from the Feast of Tabernacles, the pictures that come from it. It's just a beautiful picture of not only spiritual realities but our physical reality here in this world. I just really love this feast. This was a time when the Israelites were to make themselves these makeshift houses. Some translations call them booths. You know, kind of like you'd have a booth at a carnival or something. It's just a temporary place to sell items. Well, that's the idea. Others might translate them tabernacle or relate them to something like a tent. But in either case, this is temporary dwelling place for them to live in for 7 days during this feast. And the purpose of it was to remind them of the time when they were going through the wilderness and they lived in these makeshift houses. And we can imagine that as you're going through the wilderness, they don't have time to build a fancy structure made of stones or anything like that. They were moving, they were on the move, so they had to kind of make places to stay as they went along. What's interesting to me and what's beautiful to me is the fact that God joined them in that dwelling. We see how God dwelt in the tabernacle, which also was a tent. Even though there was quite a bit of effort put into constructing this tabernacle, it wasn't a permanent structure. It wasn't like a building or like a temple. It was a tent that could be folded down, it could be carried, it could be put back up again. But God was basically participating in the same experience as the Israelites were experiencing. And that's amazing to me, that God would be able to humble himself to the point of making his dwelling place in a tent among a bunch of tent dwellers. But we see the same thing happening as we fast forward to the time of Christ. In the book of John, we have in chapter 1 basically the scripture saying that Jesus did the same exact thing. This is in John chapter 1. Let's get there real quick. John chapter 1 and verse 14. It says, "And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we saw his glory, glory as of the only begotten from the Father, full of grace and truth." That word dwelt among us literally means tabernacled among us. He basically made a temporary dwelling place here among people. And so you have, once again, God doing the same thing. Here, we, as his people, are dwelling in human flesh. We are in these tents, these temporary dwelling places, these bodies that Paul calls tents in 2 Corinthians chapter 5. Jesus came to live in that same dwelling, to experience the same things that we experience. And that's a mind-boggling thing to think that God, who had everything, had all the glory of heaven, had all the beauty, had all the comforts of heaven, came down and humbled himself and came in the likeness of a servant and dwelt among us, experiencing what it feels like to feel pain and the heat of the day, to be thirsty, to be tired, to be hungry. He experienced all those things. He dwelt among us in the same situation that we are in. But his tabernacling among us ended with the resurrection. After he fulfilled his commission, after he fulfilled his purpose for coming here, he was crucified on the cross, and he died and was buried, and he rose again on the third day. And then, in that resurrected body, he then had his permanent dwelling place, and he ascended into heaven with that resurrected body, showing us that we have something to look forward to as well, that we have a permanent dwelling place waiting for us. During the time of Solomon, Solomon actually brought forth the tabernacle, the temple, for the Lord, to give him a more permanent dwelling place. And God's going to do the same for us. There is a temple, a permanent structure waiting for us, a resurrected body waiting for us. Let me just go ahead and turn to 2 Corinthians chapter 5, because it talks about this in some detail. Paul talks about our bodies as a earthly tent. He says, "For we know that if the earthly tent, which is our house, is torn down," which these bodies can be torn down. Remember, they are temporary dwelling places. It says, "If they are torn down, we have a building from God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens." Not temporary, eternal in the heavens. And so this building that is waiting for us in the heavens is our resurrected body. Our permanent bodies that we will dwell in for eternity. Paul would also say in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, he would say this. It says, verse 42, "So also is the resurrection of the dead. It is sown a perishable body, it is raised an imperishable body. It is sown in dishonor, it is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness, it is raised in power. It is sown a natural body, it is raised a spiritual body." And so this is what we have to look forward to. And so let's just remember, the state that we're in right now is just temporary. Sometimes we make all of our aspirations and all of our goals and all of our love and all of our efforts go into this life as though we're going to live here forever, but we're not. I like to refer to this world as a campsite. We're just setting up camp for a while until we go to our permanent home. And when we look at things from that perspective, it helps us to look at the various situations and circumstances that we go through in life and see them in the right light. And we need to respond to those things as people who are looking past those things. We're looking for that city that God has reserved for us. A city that's not made with hands. A city that is waiting for us to be our permanent residence as we dwell in the presence of God forever. That's a beautiful, beautiful promise that God has given us. So today, let's just meditate on that. Think about that for a while. Thank you guys for watching the video. I hope you all do have a great day. I love you guys. God bless.